Elizabeth's policy towards the Netherlands trod a tightrope. She didn't wish to be seen giving open help to Philip's rebellious subjects, because that would break the rules of the royal club to which both she and Philip belonged. Nor, on the other hand, did she want to see Philip re-establish a real power over the Netherlands. That would enable Philip to resume the persecution of the Protestants. Still worse, it would enable him to turn the Netherlands into a springboard for the invasion of England. So, every time Philip looked as though he was getting the upper hand, Elizabeth threw large amounts of gold at the Dutch rebels to stiffen their resistance. But mighty Spain would not be beaten by a Dutch revolt, and William's rebellion began to buckle under the force of Spanish arms. Elizabeth needed someone else to try to stop Philip. Enter the Duke of Anjou. His mother had put him forward as a husband for Elizabeth when he was just 18 and she was 39. But he was reputedly puny and scarred by smallpox, and Elizabeth hadn't been interested. But 6 years later, he began to intrigue her. The Duke belonged to the French royal family, but as the youngest son, he had little chance of inheriting the throne. So he had to look elsewhere for a kingdom of his own. He hoped to find one in the Netherlands. If Elizabeth could pull the right strings, Anjou would be the perfect puppet to oppose Philip. Elizabeth flourished her diplomatic trump card, now a bit worn and past its best, but still playable. Marriage was on the table again.
Vous allez restaurer cette vie languissante.
Anjou's ambition needed money. He began a secret correspondence with Elizabeth, but his letters didn't talk of interest rates. Instead, they used the language of love.
La plus parfaite des cieux.
She was his belle majesté. He was her slave. His declarations combined devotion and passion with just a tasteful hint of eroticism. Anjou sent a close friend, Jean Simier, to England to continue the seduction and the financial negotiations on his behalf.
Je vous présente une lettre de Monsieur le Duc.
Simier was described as a most choice courtier, exquisitely skilled in love toys and court dalliances. Elizabeth was more than half in love with his master without even having met him. Anjou arrived at Greenwich in the small hours of the 17th of August, 1579. His first thought was to rush straight to the Queen's bedchamber. Instead, Simier persuaded him to take some rest. But then Simier wrote a letter to Elizabeth that was almost as titillating as though the Duke really had burst in on the slumbering Queen. I got in between the sheets, Simier wrote, and would to God you were there too, so that he could explain his mind to you more easily. Elizabeth and Anjou hit it off immediately. She'd steeled herself to meet an ugly little fellow. What she saw instead was a mature and attractive man. She nicknamed him her Frog. The Spanish ambassador Mendoza remarked,
"The Queen has, with difficulty, been able to entertain the Duke, being captivated, overcome with love. She told me she's never found a man whose nature and actions suited her better."
Elizabeth was in love. The Ice Maiden had melted, and the Virgin Queen was longing to become a blushing bride. Anjou had caught her on the rebound. She'd just learned that Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, her favourite of 20 years' standing, had betrayed her by daring to get married in secret. But she was also fascinated by Anjou himself. All of the Englishmen who'd attracted her, from Thomas Seymour when she was a teenager to Leicester himself, were bold, athletic men who'd barnstormed their way into Elizabeth's favour. Anjou was different, with his quirky face, his expressive hands, and his French ways. He charmed her into love.